Great.
Mhm.
All right. Well, welcome to Coffee with a Purpose on this first day of July. I have no idea. How could that have happened? How are we already in July? That makes no sense.
Time flies when you're having fun.
So our numbers are light this morning so far, but regardless, we're very happy to have Deb Sayre with us, who has a long history of volunteer work in the town, but in particular, today she's here to talk to us about the Natick Center Cultural District. And Martin's already turned on the recording, and I think we'll follow our usual custom of folks doing a brief introduction of themselves, just so Deb can create a couple more points of connections. So why don't we start at MetroWorks? Cindy, you want to say hi? Or...
Deb.
Well, okay, a little bit more than that, but
I see Deb pretty much every Saturday at the farmers market.
oh, you do? Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's another good point. Yeah.
Very kind to give me a table when I was working with the CPA for Natick. I am a steward for the Tacawambe Trail, and I sometimes help with keep Natick beautiful at Coolidge Field. I'm a little lax on that on that volunteer work these days. And I moved to Natick in just before the pandemic in 2019.
And I'm Martin Kessel. I've known you for many years. I used to think of you as a lifelong Natick resident, because when we moved here in 1956, your family was well established, and I thought you'd been here forever, but apparently not quite. But I'm currently active in Open Space Committee, town meeting, and many other ventures in town.
Thanks, Martin.
Yes,
and Elaine, do you want to say a little bit more? Or did you have anybody else at MetroWorks yet? Other than yeah, okay. Elaine?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just
okay.
Yeah.
Long involvement with disability rights, working with staff at a time of deinstitutionalization, went to all the state schools, they call them, Belchertown, Rentham, Furrows, Dever, there was one other. It was an exciting time, and I was fearless and ignorant.
All right, thanks. Bill.
Hi, Bill Ramage. I think of myself as a Coffee with a Purpose supporter, Natick Beautiful supporter, Eco Natick founder, and member of the Community Preservation Committee.
Thanks, Bill. Chris, just gotta come off mute there. Great.
Hi, I'm Chris Gentry. Been in Natick for about 24 years now, and I guess I can't just say I'm a Coffee with a Purpose now. I've been coming for a little while now, so maybe becoming a regular, trying to learn more about what everyone's doing, and hopefully I'll transform that into getting more involved as time permits.
Great.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chris. Pat.
Hi, Pat Conaway. I'm founder of Coffee with a Purpose with my sister Sally, and Carrie, Leslie, Ian helped us out. Keep Natick beautiful. Good to see you all.
Thanks, Pat. Sally.
Got to get them off mute. Good morning. I'm Pat's sister, but I really enjoyed this group. And I'm going to say that Doug and Sarah and Martin and Bill and others have really brought Coffee with a Purpose to a high level. And it's so interesting. Thank you for being here to speak with us this morning.
Thanks, Sally. Carrie.
Hi, good morning. Sorry for the late appearance. Speaking of keeping it beautiful, I was out doing a trash run just before I hit 7 spots, and I figured I should take a shower before I jumped online, so you could.
Yeah, looks great.
Yeah, involved in other environmental stuff, Repair Cafe guy, and I guess that's about it for now. So look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great.
I'm going to get some breakfast, so I'm going offline.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. And Brinley.
Good morning. I'm assuming this is just introduction. Sorry, I just hopped
Yes,
on.
that's right. Yep, just introduction.
Friendly Vicar's been here for a while. Looking forward to it. I love the cultural district, Deb. So I'm so and the market. So I'm so glad to hear what you have to say today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, retired geologist, interested in all things environmental, doing a bunch of stuff around town over the years, been town meeting member for a long time, currently on the Community Preservation Committee.
Great. And I'm Doug. I moderate this group these days, try to line up speakers along with others, and do most of my volunteer work with the First Congregational Church, which when you have an old building, there's always 16 things that need to be done.
Make
And
that 17.
Yeah, 17 more waiting. But anyway, it's a great church. So that looks like that's us for now. So yeah, Deb, again, thanks for coming, and look forward to whatever you have to share with us this morning.
Well, I will admit initially, right off the bat, I did not write anything because the few times in my life where I have written something and prepared it had nothing to do with what came out of my mouth.
That's fine.
A funny story, years and years ago, I made a presentation to Dedham Family Service. I was working for the Department of Mental Health at the time and was trying to start a residential treatment center at Medfield, which I did. But I'm talking to this group asking for money. And I come home and my husband at the time says, how'd it go? And I said, great. They gave us a couple $100. And they never gave anyone more than 25. So that was a big coup. And he said, what'd you say? And I said, I have no clue. Absolutely no. So what was rattling around in my brain was to give you sort of an overview. When I came back to Natick about 40 some odd years ago, this is how I describe Natick Center. You get your hair done and your pants shortened while you waited for your pizza. Those were the options in town. I got involved with Natick Center Associates, which is the legal entity of the cultural district. One, because my brother Stephen was one of the very beginning members. Stephen gets involved with everything. And two, because at a certain point in time, Joyce Moss was a part-time employee of Natick Center. At that time, I think we had 4th of July celebrations and a few other required holidays. And I remembered going from business to business, talking about people joining Natick Center Associates so that more could be done and there could be a viable entity. And everybody was saying, nobody's going to tell me how to run my business. And it was like, no, that's, so the attitudes have changed drastically. So on my part, Joyce and I are walking down the street one day and we're chatting and she says, you know, I heard about this thing out in California called the farmer's market. I said, sounds interesting. Okay. So we made a few phone calls, and next thing you know, I've got 2 farmers in front of my father's store, Debs and Wallpaper, on the sidewalk. Then we added a bread vendor, and then I asked permission to move it to the common. For the next 10 years, Dick Cugini tried to convince me to move the market onto the town hall parking lot. And I kept saying no, and he kept saying, but we have to save the grass. So he finally gave up as the market was growing. And
When did the market start? In
about 96
back at the store?
at the store.
Okay.
I can't tell you the year.
Yeah.
I
that's
can't
fine.
tell you
No, I just
if I
wanted-
had breakfast, much less what year we moved to the common. That was the evolution. And we were along south. And then a few years later, they flipped us to common. And then they flipped us somewhere else. And we've sort of, the only place we haven't really been is the 135 side. But we're getting there because every year the market is little bigger every year, I say, well, we have enough, and then someone calls me with something else that's different. And now I have to figure out how to shrink it down so it fits into the spiritual center for the winter market.
Mhm.
It might have been about 10 years ago, we decided to have a winter market. And I went from January to March. And we were in Johnson, the Johnson School.
Hmm.
And then a few years later, the hospital offered us a big room, which was wonderful, but nobody wanted to come to the hospital for the market. And ultimately, Ian started the spiritual center, which became a community center, which is now the home of the winter market. So that's basically my major involvement. Another thing that happened downtown was Ginger and I got into a conversation about how to promote the 2 or 3 businesses that we had. We had no real retail. I think we had Optica and Jones's. That was it. And we thought about putting artists in the stores that would be willing to be open so that people would come in and learn. And interestingly enough, one year, I happened to be on the sidewalk in front of Debson's when somebody walked in to see the artist and said, "Oh, I never knew there was a paint store here." So I know, in the 20 years we've done it, I know of one success. Eventually, the artist said, "Oh, it's really nice, can we be outside?" And unfortunately, it has now become its own event, less connected to the businesses. And this year, July 18th, will be another art walk with crafters up and down the sidewalk, music all over the place. So what's happened over the years is, in many ways, the evolution of what Natick Center could be. And I would say that since Athena had taken over about 8 or 9 years ago, she started with the market. We are sponsored by Natick Center Associates, so we're part of the cultural district, and Art Walk. And she built Natick Nights around that. And I would say over the last decade, the wonderful common that we have, and I think we have to give it credit for its location and its entity, because it lends itself to community events. So we have added Natick Nights, Multicultural Day, trying to bring in as many elements in the community as possible. This year, I'm delighted to say at the market, last week it was the police, we've had the select board members, we've had the fire chief, we've had
The communications guy came.
Jay from communications. I'm a one-pot cook and I'm translating that into the market, so I have offered over the years nonprofits in towns, come down so people know you exist and they're aware of your service, and that's finally happening. So more and more you will see organizations that service some component of our community at the market.
So Deb, when you say like the police and the fire and the select board, are you saying that they had a spot there on the common to, hey, we're here, ask us what's on your mind, or we'll tell you?
Yep,
Cool. Great.
and the police have brought their little vehicle so the kids could climb in, and
Oh,
it's
nice.
just been wonderful. Because too many people in town, well, there are still people who don't know we have a farmer's market. My joke is, oh, you weren't home when I came to your house to tell you. So, I've tried to bring in as many elements. So it's a community event, so you can get good food, hear good music. The funny thing about the good music is we don't pay them. And when I send out the blast to all the musicians on my list and they send me back dates, I have been told I only got 2 dates. Now, these guys are playing for free, but they have such a good time and the atmosphere is so community that it's nice to have more than you need. So, we are now at a point in the cultural district where there's some thought to, much like an older teenager, what am I gonna be when I grow up? So we have evolved these different events and now an entity where people want to belong. They realize it's not a control, it's a connection. And I believe that the board is now evaluating just what's the purpose of the cultural center, what direction do we go, what are the elements? There's business development and there's community events, and I believe community events help business development, because when people love to come downtown, businesses love to come to service them and do business with them. So I think it's a synergy that we have built over the years, because obviously people are coming. And with all the building, more will come, hopefully more restaurants. I would like to see smaller, unique boutiques that people could afford to run, not big ones, but have a variety. So, but I think we're heading in the right direction. And just because I didn't know what else to do, I wanted to show you. This was the original farmers market logo.
Oh, wow.
And if you notice, because Joyce Moss's brother, who lived in New York, designed this for her when we started, there's a pear in there. And periodically somebody would say, but you don't sell pears at the market. So eventually I went to Scott Pressler and said, we need a new logo. And this is what. He started with a circle and I said, and I turned it into this. So this is our new farmers market logo. And I just this morning got an email from a record store in Norwood that wants to be part of the market. And it's like, no, we'll grow it or make it market. So it's food and it's crafts. I have a list of 352 crafters to draw on, to juggle scheduling, to involve in other events. And I said I did not want commercial. I didn't want Lululemon, Tupperware, nothing against them, that's not the vehicle. So many people kept asking to be at the market that I said, okay, a couple of years ago, we're gonna start a sponsorship program and it's gonna cost them $100, which to me was a lot to be at the market. If you were a member, 150 if you're not. Sad to say, I used to have 1 a week. Now I have 2 a week. And I still have people calling me. My boundary is not working. Very honestly, and they're taking 2 and 3 dates. And we're talking chiropractors, dentists, personal coach, boxing, schools. Everybody wants to be in Natick Center at the market. And I attribute it not just to the growth and the offering. I've had vendors say to me, even if I didn't sell anything, I had such a good time because the people are so nice. And I think, I don't know about other towns, but the atmosphere of our community events are so inclusive and so friendly and so helpful that I think that's something that Natick should really recognize and take pride in. Now.
So, Deb, I wanted to ask you, so I think you said you had heard, or you and your friend had heard about a farmer's market way out in California. And so let's try that here. Of course, now it seems like they're, I don't want to say everywhere, but they're certainly a lot more common. Do you have farmers or other towns contacting you about, you're so successful, can you give us some tips? Or
And very honestly, it's very much like any trend. Like I remember when I was juggling jewelers because everybody was into making jewelers. Don't forget, we're living longer, we retire, we get into something, some hobby. And farmers markets are the same way. It's a trend. Oh, they have one. We should have one. And they don't stop and realize that when you have too many, all you're doing is making smaller slices of the pie.
Mm.
And I'm delighted to say we started early enough to be able to grow into what we are. But I get calls all the time on, we want to start a farmer's market. And if I can't talk them out of it, well, you have to realize you're looking for vendors, but it has to be worth their time and effort. You want to do something nice and fun for the town, but it has to be viable. And if there's a farmer's market in the next town, all you're gonna do is draw off of theirs. So you get half and they get half.
Hmm.
And, you know, I try to be as realistic about their success as possible. I talk to them about how they grow, because sometimes they think more is better, and if you don't have a customer base, no one does well. So you have to grow as your customer base grows. You have to offer the key things people want, and then you can add on other things. And in our market, because I started it, I got invited to speak at the farmers market conference one year. Never made it because the politicians talked too long. But the other two people on the panel were these really delightful, young, eager newbies to markets. And they contacted me and introduced themselves and wanted to share information, and they each send me their policies and procedures. So I get these 4 and 5 pages in 8 to 10 point font. And I'm laughing because I don't have any of that. So I have to go to the computer, double space in larger font, write down the policies. On one page, I managed to fill one page that said, if your food, you have to be cleared by the Board of Health. You'll only be accepted if you're necessary to the market. There'll be no undercutting of prices. You'll have whatever I could drag out of my brain to put on paper. And the bottom line was, I'm the boss. If there's an issue, I'll deal with it. It was just because, in essence, I started it, I guided the evolution. Which
Mhm.
means I have the relationships, which means we don't have a lot of the challenge. The biggest challenge I have is reminding people there are no pets at the market.
Mhm.
You know, because farms have been with us from the beginning. And as people come in, I say, oh, talk to so-and-so, he'll fill you in on the market. So the attitude is contagious of enjoy yourself, serve your customer, provide good quality products.
And they all know each other.
They
That
do,
was really
they
cool
know
to
each
see.
other from years here and from other markets, and no matter how often I say, please don't tell anyone else about the market, I get a call. So-and-so with this vendor said, oh. It's like, I'm having to develop the ability to say no. If you've been to the market, you know it's still developing. But that's, I guess I'm talking so much about the market because that's been my major involvement. Now with Athena gone, I'm working with Paul and Katie and Lee on the other events. And I have to tell you, since I've been in Natick, back in Natick, I can't think of one incident where I had to work with somebody that it wasn't a joy. That there was a problem. That the people in Natick, now we have characters and we have opinions, but we don't, or I haven't experienced people who are out for themselves or out to create chaos or, I mean, other than not in my backyard stuff, which I don't get involved in, this town, I think, has grown often through relationships and through people that care about this town. I don't know if any of you were, many years ago, the Metro West Healthcare Foundation in Framingham, which
Mhm.
is a wonderful organization. There were 3 or 4 old men that hung on to the money from the sale of the hospital, which is what funded the foundation. And it was time for them to give up the second half. And they weren't giving it up. And there was a meeting in Framingham, standing room only. And I listened to them and to some of the politicians in Framingham at the time. And I watched the Natick select people and the Framingham select people very gently move their chairs away from each other up on the stage. I said, we wouldn't have this kind of behavior in Natick. Because even the people who give us trouble do it coming out of what they think is best for Natick.
Hmm. Yep.
And I think I think it's extraordinary. It wasn't about, I want and I'm gonna hold. You know, I mean, it doesn't mean everybody is community minded, but I don't find the negativity, the greed, the territory building, the ego that I have seen in other places.
Mhm.
And very honestly, that I have worked for, especially in New York. So I would like to answer any questions that anybody has that I could answer. Or I'll make up an answer, it'll sound good, so.
Yeah,
So
I
do
think.
you- Any of you
Yeah,
have
go.
any suggestions for what you would like the cultural district, the downtown? To
So,
do?
Bill, I see you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask? Or-
Well, mine was not a question. I just wanted to, having you here reminded me. I have 2 granddaughters. They're now 12 and 16. When they were roughly 8 and 12, they wanted to bring some crafting stuff to the farmer's market, and they were accepted graciously with no problem. And they had a ball, and they raised a bunch of money, and it was just kids.
Well,
But they were welcomed, and they had a great time. And just thank you for being so open, welcoming to the folks that want to be part of this event. So thank
When
you.
I started Kids Connect, I started it, and I'll come back around to that. Because
I don't know what kids.
Kids Connect is a nonprofit tutoring program, right here in downtown Natick. And my heart is with at-risk kids. All right, I've been a probation officer, a child welfare worker, started a residential drug treatment program, worked for the Department of Mental Health. So I come to Natick, and out on the street are kids roaming in the middle of the night, which I have a problem with. So I started Kids Connect to be a drop-in center for at-risk kids. Dennis, the police chief at the time, was a sweetheart, calls me one day and says, I got you a grant from public safety, no recreation, no sports. They come and they sit and they study. And I went, sure. We actually started in the training room at the police station when we got the grant. I hired some tutors because it had to be educational. And then we kicked out an artist up where we are right now on Main Street and took over a big room up there. And the tutors worked with the kids that needed tutoring. And I wanted the drop-in kids. And Paula Polk, who some of you may remember, she was the director of the library and designed the library as it is, which everybody said was too big at the time, but she knew better. She called me and she said, she was on my board, and she said, I have these 3 kids that I'm throwing out of the library misbehaving. Do you want them? I went, yes, yes. And it was February, and she walks the 3 of them over to me. And it was Jared and Chris and Brandon. And they were my first delinquents, and I say that with love. And then their friends started, and for 5 years, I had a drop-in for at-risk middle school kids. These were kids that were using drugs, dealing drugs, on probation. And at Kids Connect, they got fed, they got accepted. I had to explain to one of them when he says, why do you do this? It was, I'll believe in you until you believe in you.
Hmm.
And being the oldest of four and a Jewish mother, it was in my nature. Those kids were gold. They didn't know it. It was my job to keep them alive. Unfortunately, as I follow up some of them, 3 of them that I know of have not made it for a variety of reasons. I just ran into one of my kids. He's a painter across the street where they're building a new 3-unit condo thing. And he came to me 20 years ago. And then the electrician says, don't I know you? My daughter came to you for tutoring. So that kind of, I think it's part of the nature of Natick. So I had the drop-in. I even had one incident. One of my kids, who was feared by many initially, is at the top of the stairs, and a kid was coming up for tutoring. And in many ways, it was 2 groups of kids. You had the quiet little students who were having difficulty, and then you had the street kids. And the student is coming up, and John looks over the railing, and the kid freezes like a deer in the headlights. And John goes, you going to Kids Connect? Kid, like bobs his head, not too much. John says, cool. Comes up. That population mixed. Support. It was almost like you came into an alternate universe, where they could be who they could be, not who they were, where it didn't matter what part of Natick, what grade, or anything. It was magical.
Wow. Is that program still running?
No, we just do tutoring now.
Okay.
Those kids went on to high school, and the new kids came in. They were, I don't want to say less damaged, but it was more like we have nothing to do. There wasn't the same level, and I did not want to do the babysitting. Because very honestly, I overheard this too. One of the guys had messed up, and and it took a lot to mess up, put him out of the program. And he came back the next day and stood outside the doorway because he wanted back in, because it mattered that much. And one of the other kids said, well, you're gonna have a Debbie talk first. And Debbie talk was where I was trying to teach them some emotional literacy. Because with some of these kids, if I said, how do you feel? I'd get a blank look. So I would have to start with, well, are you mad or are you sad? And start identifying and teaching those kinds of things. But when it evolved into, well, we have no place to go, we'll go to Kids Connect, it didn't have the same value for me, because they didn't need me as much, and we've been getting a lot of phone calls from other grades. We had been a middle school program, but the parents were calling and saying, well, my daughter goes there, but I've got a high school kid who needs, or I have a 3rd grader. So now we serve grades 1 through 12 in a variety of subjects. So what else have I done?
How about your artwork?
Oh,
We always come by and pick something up.
well, it's funny because, you get older, you're retired, you should have something to do. I expect to drop dead at the market, so I'm not retiring. Right? But I used to go to the jewelry show with a friend who made beautiful jewelry, and I started buying interesting things. And eventually I had so much, I had to do something with it. So I go to Michael's and I buy beadboard, and I start laying out necklaces, but I only wear earrings, so halfway through the necklace, I'm making matching earrings. And then I go back and, okay, I have to finish this. And then I call my friend who's very artistic over, and I've got like 8 sets laid out. And I said, what do you think? And she looks at me and she looks at what I did and she, who knew? She meant, who knew you had any taste or any ability in anything artistic? Because she painted and I was not known for that. Neither is my family. No sports, no art.
Until now.
Well, and then, but nobody wears the necklaces because they're bigger than more New York and Florida. And now since COVID, people don't at all. So I have probably more stock in my studio than Michael's does. And my big concern is that if I drop dead, having to deal with all of that would drive my son crazy. So in my mind, I have to start making things so that he has less to deal with. It's like, but, and then Liliana, I don't know if any of you know Liliana Glenn, she does magnificent glasswork. Said to me, come on, we're gonna take a workshop. We're gonna get you out of Natick. We're gonna get you doing something else. So we go to Newton and we do this workshop in collage. And everybody's doing all of these things, and collage there was one-dimensional. So I find myself going to my left brain, cutting out newspaper, doing flat collage, which I found very boring. And then somehow someone told me about Carol Krentzman. So I took a class with Carol, which was awesome because I could break tiles, I could do weird things, I could mix media because flat doesn't do it for me. So I started doing mosaics. So once again, if anybody has a small bathroom, I probably have enough tile for you to do a portion. I have more stock. So many of my mosaics are hanging on the walls in the hall, in the lobby of Kids Connect. When I downsized from South Natick to Natick Center, I had many fewer walls, so I don't have any place to put them in my house. So if anybody has a little place on the wall where you need something, a particular size, a particular color, please call me. I'd be delighted to make it. Get some things out of my
Yeah, but
house.
I think you need to give one to the fire stations. I think the fire stations should have one of your work up, especially the new one over there off of Speen Street. They need stuff on the walls.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
talk to the
well,
chief and see if he'd accept it, and what size and what color he wants.
Be fireproof.
Thank you, it would be fireproof, yes. So,
Carol Krentzman is a town treasure. Our church did a mosaic project with her, and we have this beautiful piece of
we did all the stained glass
sanctuary
in the
now.
library.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Incredible.
And all the mosaics on Court Street, is that?
Yep.
the name?
Yep.
It was like 4 or 5 huge ones there.
Well, the first piece I made, because there are people working on stained glass and they're doing pictures and I take a tile and I put a big rectangle burgundy tile in the center. And she said, aren't you gonna break that? And I went, no. And I had broken things around it because I liked. When I make them at home, I use some of my jewelry findings. So I like mixing tile with metal, with glass, with. When it's flat, it's boring. So,
I do have a question.
yes,
You mentioned a few names, somebody Moss and then Ginger somebody, and then you talked about Athena having gone, which I didn't know, so just. can you-
Joyce Moss was, oh, how many years ago? Well,
right before
it-
Margaret? So Margaret
Yeah,
would've
well, it
been-
was a different, Margaret was the secretary for,
Right, but then she jumped in for a while, but I think she immediately followed Joyce, right? So it would have been early 2000s?
yes,
2004?
actually, if we were talking about starting the market and the market started 25 years ago.
Yeah.
She was a part-time downtown manager
Okay,
and her job was. Actually, she planned the May Day celebration and her job was to. I don't wanna say revitalize, but come with some new ideas and try to get the business community
so
together.
for this business entity.
For Natick Center Associates,
Yes,
which is
okay,
the legal entity
okay,
For the cultural district,
Okay.
that's just a state designation.
Okay.
All right, so she
Oh.
worked for Center Associates. And Ginger McEachern is one of the owners of Five Crows. She's the current
Okay,
president of the Natick Art Association.
okay,
She's on the board
Mhm.
of Natick Center Associates.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, so Natick Center Associates is a 501c3 charitable organization.
Okay.
Its charge is basically economic development and economic vitality for the Natick Center region.
Okay.
What happened back in 2012, well, for years before 2012, this Center Associates got together to deal with things collectively as business owners. They would bring issues to town hall. They fostered a relationship with, helping clean up the common and focus on the redevelopment of downtown.
Mhm.
And then over the years, they wanted to kind of work on programming. That's where Spooktacular and some of the other events that we've known for many years have come about, was through Natick Center Associates. In 2012, the state had just launched the Cultural District Initiative through the Mass Cultural Council, MCC.
Okay.
And Mass Cultural Council basically provided a mechanism for municipalities to partner with nonprofits to create these designated areas called cultural districts.
Okay.
So the district itself is just this sort of amorphous entity that exists by a memorandum of understanding between the town of Natick and this legal entity called Natick Center Associates.
Okay. But Natick Center Associates already existed before.
Correct. It had to exist. In fact, that's how the town was able to create the district,
Okay.
was it partnered
Okay.
with them.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Athena was the executive director of that. I'm actually serving in her absence as the
Yeah.
interim. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a bridging period right now, because I
Mm.
was liaison for the select board to their board, and I'm working
Mm.
with their board right now to kind of figure out, as Deb had alluded to, sort of the next
Mhm.
phase. What does
Okay.
this need to be? And I think, as the town is grappling with changing access to resources, people turning over, we just lost Travis Farley, the head of Rec and Parks Department, took a new job effective last week. So we have no department head for the Recreation and Parks Department, which is a major partner of the Cultural District for Natick Days and some of the other
Sure.
programs.
Sure.
So as a municipality facing a very difficult time hiring and retaining people, because there are just fewer going into municipal government.
Mm.
And then as an entity right now, trying to figure out, I think bring that balance between the arts and sort of the purpose of the district was to bring people downtown.
Mhm.
But in a lot of ways, a lot of the business owners aren't sure what the arts community means or does for them.
Mhm.
And that's what I've observed in my first few weeks serving in this role, just talking to people, as I think there's an expectation of a lot of merchants that this cultural district will bring business across the threshold of their doors. Whereas it's really just designed to create vitality and energy and awareness of Natick Center, and then
Okay.
let the marketing go from there, right? And that's,
I see.
so there's a lot of different perspectives and expectations from it. That's what I'm trying to get my arms around right now.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Thanks for
and
that.
it's creating, it's, I think, as Deb was indicating, and you kind of paused and you said, I've never worked with, somebody I didn't like to work with. That's why I was waiting for the until. Either she got distracted or she.
No,
I'm keeping the streak alive, but I don't want to overstay my welcome. So I'm on an interim basis until we can sort of design a job description that fits whatever this entity is going to
So
be.
that's actually really cool, because it gives you a perspective that you might not otherwise get,
Absolutely.
this
Yeah.
opportunity slash.
Well,
Yeah, Paul, I really appreciate that explanation of the relationship between those two entities as you're speaking, and also Deb, as you were talking about just how great it is whenever there's anything on the common, whether it's the farmer's market or Natick Days or any the multicultural festival. It's just I was there the other day for Scoopapalooza. It's just a great downtown space. But
Well,
I'm also thinking that, I know the town's now got this study going on for Main Street. And at least on my mind, it's Main Street traffic congestion. It seems like the input to that project and the solutions for that project are going to be critical, that the Natick Center Associates and the Cultural District have a big hand in that.
I want to tell you that it's been more than 10 years since I told David Linsky that the state has to be working on access to 128 other than through us. Because they come up from the south and they come up 27, and they should be planning across south of us instead of just through us, but
Interesting.
but who's gonna listen to me? I think I want to get back to the cultural district and the retail. I think sometimes retailers, they think more direct marketing and boots into the store without realizing that we hear this every day. I love Natick Center. I think it's wonderful, it's friendly, it's welcoming. I think part of the cultural district and Natick Center Associates' mission is to foster that. Create the atmosphere that one has businesses wanting to be there because they like the atmosphere. And two, people love being downtown with the opportunity to find out about what else we offer. I think making the connection from the businesses to the atmosphere that brings them downtown. Some of that responsibility is on the store. I don't think it's our job to get people in. It's our job to get people open to going in. And what I found is that the new vendors, new businesses are much more open to that community connection and reciprocity than the old timers. I mean, I feel funny saying old timer, but when you've been doing business a certain way for 50 years, you don't want some upstart telling you what else you could do. So I think the evolution of Natick Center is the newer people who are coming in with something different, maybe on a smaller scale, maybe not, but they are more open to making the connections and being part of and accepting support from the cultural district, Natick Center Associates. Many of the new businesses work together. So I think that's part of the growth and the change in Natick Center, the change of attitude and openness to change.
Mhm.
So.
Brendan, you've got your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Make a comment?
Sure. Probably both. I can say first, when I was given the little hello, what's up, I didn't say how long I'd lived here, but I moved here in 2001. And I lived in the old baseball factory when I first moved here. And one of the reasons I picked Natick and loved Natick so much was because of the market. Really a big fan. And I used to go on to the Common on Saturdays and take my bubbles and blow bubbles and hang with kids. And because I just really loved it. So I really love what it's grown into. So thank you so much for all of your efforts and all of that. My thoughts are what I feel like is always missing. And I'm not sure if this is really more of a infrastructure than a cultural, but I kind of feel like it's both, especially since we're doing so much building downtown. I would love to have a small, more everyday market as a business downtown. And I feel like as we're adding more residences, it would really, really benefit us to have that. So if anybody's ever talking with you about that in terms of businesses, somewhere that is a little more than just a handy pantry for your milk and eggs, but not taking away all of the business from a fresh market on Saturdays, but some kind of like a combination. I think about the fact that New York City and a lot of places in Boston, they have little grocery store markets on every corner, or at least every other block, to accommodate all of their residents living downtown. And I would love to see that. And then my other thing, and I do think this is probably more cultural than necessarily infrastructure, but as a parent with young kids still, and as somebody who likes to have a variety, we regularly have to go out of town to eat because almost everything shuts down, certainly by 9 o'clock. It's really, really hard to eat downtown in Natick. We have a gazillion pizza stores and only one of them stays open late. And we've found that especially in the summertime, it's really hard. And there isn't somewhere that we could go do an open mic night, like have a little jazz, have a cup of coffee, kind of an evening mixed space. And this is not against what we do have. Like, I'm not trying to say that, TCAN isn't awesome, because TCAN is awesome. It's just not the same thing of what I'm referring to. When I read all of the comments on Natick Moms Group and Natick Talks, and it really seems like one of the things that we're looking for down there would have that cultural feel of being able to go do spoken word one night, of having a little jazz. And I know that Agostino's does music occasionally, but that's still not the same thing as what I'm talking about. So I'm not really sure what I would call this space, but and maybe it's more than one space, but it does seem like as we're going to grow our residents downtown, it would behoove us to grow our evening activity opportunities downtown, because, outside of Buttercup, there's really nothing to do at night downtown in Natick. There's just not much to do downtown in Natick at night. And I know there's a lot of people who complain about that. And I would really love culturally to see us work on that, so that it's not just adding another restaurant, but it's adding a cultural experience to it.
Okay.
As I mentioned, the jazz, the spoken word.
Okay, so you have a couple factors. One is the landlords who own the property, when they have an opening, what they're open to. And I would say that if you can summarize or clarify what you're looking for, what you think people are looking for, and you can get that information to some of the major landlords who are building and will be bringing things in, hopefully restaurants, hopefully something that will address that, because I think it's a growth factor. A restaurant's not gonna come to town if they don't think they're gonna have any business at night. We have been evolving into a Natick center where it's much more viable than it was years ago. Years ago, if you had a restaurant that opened at night, you were there by yourself. That the whole atmosphere and the level of need was different. So we talk about what we would like, and the reality is those are decisions that landlords make. But if they hear from people and they're getting approached by a variety of people, they can listen to what may make sense for them and the town, because the priority for them is to do good business. Individually, some are more open to what would also be good for the community, but I think the more you relay what you would like to see in the community, the more that can influence their decision if they're deciding between two viable business situations. And in terms of a market, if enough people talk to George and say, would you bring in a bigger assortment, you will do more business at Silcia. It's a natural if somebody can get through to him.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, that's my biggest worry, is that they're not gonna have enough traffic to stay in business.
How many olives can you eat?
I thought it was his sister.
His sister started it and pushed her out, and
Which business are we talking about now?
Kalikia, the Mediterranean market.
Is it Kalikia? Oh,
It's
geez.
not Felicia?
No, Kalikia.
But he has the room to bring in other things. I have tried talking to him about the fact that every Saturday, my vendors can stock some of his basics. It's not like he has to, it would be a nice synergy, but it's about.
Well, but it also takes refrigeration, which takes away from his restaurant space, which is probably his highest margin product. There's a lot of complexity when it comes into this conversation in terms of what people want to see versus what the capacity of these stores are able to do. I do think we're moving in that direction, Brinley, some of what you raised, but a couple of things, just sort of picking up on where Deb started. It is the landlords, and we've definitely over the years have had landlords that refuse to change anything, and that's changing now. I also think the nature of how people are accessing retail changing to mostly online has changed. I think part of the reason the quote newer and younger store owners are doing well is because they basically started their business in an era of e-commerce, and they understand social media drives people through their door. Right, so I look at Calliope as a great success. Christina does an amazing job building a community there. Bailey B has done a great job in terms of, you know, what it's done. I think they're probably the best, those two examples of relatively new on-site sort of point of sale marketing plus virtual marketing. The problem we have, there's a couple of them, to your point about hours and the disconnect that I've observed with the cultural district. I'm hearing from a lot of vendors that they aren't aware of when the cultural district activities are going on. Now, again, it's to Deb's point, how much can we possibly keep communicating this? If you're not a member, if you're not engaged, you may or may not hear it. But doing a better job proactively saying, hey, we're doing this thing called Natick Nights, and normally you're open until 5 or 8 on a Thursday, maybe consider staying open till 10 and pick up some lingering traffic. One thing I did start at the last Natick Nights, I asked a young mom in particular who works in marketing for a local business. I said, hey, do you ever just come downtown to shop and eat? And she said, no. And I said, why not? She loves Natick Nights. She loves the beer garden. She loves that her daughter can run off and play with the chalk. She said, when I'm hauling 2 kids in my van to go out to run errands, the last thing I can afford to do is just cherry pick going to Bailey B. I need to go to Linden Square where I can go to Roach Brothers, I could go to these 3 retailers, and I can pick up something. So we still lack that density and that mix for what I consider the resident consumers of Natick Center. The cultural district, and my fear of creating the cultural district back in 2012 was, are we building a destination for people from the outside of Natick to come in and access the arts and access these things? Or are we building a place where our kids can go to hang out and have these other experiences? Like I grew up in an area of Connecticut where we had a small, it wasn't quite a downtown, but it was a commercial area that we all hung out, right? So there was an arcade there was a bowling alley there were things to do around which the families, you know, were able to do things too. So we have sort of what I consider an imbalance, and we also have a lack of space, and we're getting new space coming online now. So that's why I think the next few years are going to be tremendous for us as far as an opportunity to change that and evolve that. The Hive was a good example of a concept of bringing in a mini market of different types of vendors. That's now flipping exclusively to the bookstore. So the Hive is a retail space that opened up across from the Debson's. It's in the Masons building there.
Okay.
Used to be Java Gyms, but it was basically, if MetroWorks is sort of a membership-based office space, that was like a membership-based retail space where you could actually join as a small retailer, like an Etsy, but a physical location.
Okay.
And they created a consortium of people that did their own work and sold it there for retail. But what they found was it was just difficult to manage with, you know, 6 different entrepreneurs in one location having to share that. If they're not working together from the get-go, it was hard to create that synergy.
Okay.
So now it's become basically a bookstore. So one tenant exclusively.
But 2 of the
Downtown.
participants are now
Yes,
stayed in Natick.
yes.
Okay.
They sort of graduated from that to a location.
Yeah, and that was the idea, was if you can come in, sort of start at the farmer's market, then we can find you physical location at the Hive or a place like the Hive, and then you can take on a
Yeah.
traditional lease. So one of the things I think is a byproduct of these great relationships that retailers have is this pull towards, you know, Ginger McEachern has always been a great person. Deb Sayre has always been a great person reaching out to retailers and saying, hey, have you thought about Natick? So we're gonna get there, but I think it's taking a long time. And I think the challenge we have too is just the reality of how people are shopping. If the stores aren't open late, and you know, they have to basically find somebody to work those late hours, it is hard enough to find people to work. And now to stay open extraordinarily late. You know, we had this conversation in a meeting recently. Maybe the answer is not staying open late in addition to, but maybe close one morning, but stay open one night. You know, like a lot of businesses not opening on Mondays kills Monday, right? There's no opportunity for Monday business downtown. So these are the things I think as a collective, we have to figure out a better way to work. And I see that as the Merchants Association with the Natick Center Associates doing a better job, sort of creating that urgency and opportunity for people.
There's a Merchants Association in addition to Natick Center Associates?
Oh, it is the same.
It's a group of the merchants within the Natick Center.
Oh,
The
okay.
Natick Center members that are retailers get together as a Merchants Association, yeah. As opposed to the artists. And what's hard, and the animosity that might exist, it's not white hot, but there is some tension in that a lot of the artists that own businesses downtown benefit because of the arts, the culture. right? Cultural district. If you're in the business of art, the cultural district works for you as a retailer. If you're in the business of food, maybe not as much, right? So that there's this notion, and then office space like that, and it's like, yes, I benefit from this location, but until I got this ground level location, I mean, I've been in Natick Center for 9 years, nobody knew it existed, and same challenges, right? It's that I'm on the second floor, how many chiropractors, how many accountants, how many insurance agents, massage therapists, other services are based on our second and third floors
Right.
that don't benefit from walk-by traffic necessarily, and with, these archaic sandwich board sign bylaws and things that don't allow them to pull people off the street level and go upstairs. Plus, they don't have accessibility to upstairs. A lot of these buildings are old. We've got a lot of infrastructure challenges, to use Brinley's word, that's some of the stuff we're looking at. I would love to see us potentially offer a bond for economic development for the betterment of downtown. I see buildings like the old Masons building, the Oddfellows building where Bagel Table is, and the Clark Block building, which just sold. All of them have gorgeous upstairs spaces, very large meeting spaces, some with stained glass windows. But they lack elevator access and they lack the ventilation systems to really accommodate what I'll consider a current use. So if we collectively can make it easier for those landlords to make the improvements, hopefully that creates opportunities for better businesses and services to come in.
I was hearing that there's some kind of a friends group maybe has started or might start for the upstairs area of the Clark Block, and the new owner is interested or potentially willing to work with them. What can anyone tell us more about that?
We're talking about the third floor?
Third and fourth, yeah, the Clark building has a the ballroom, the grand ballroom upstairs, yeah, so there is a group, there's an architect that's leading that charge and historian, and there's a small group that got together, and the new owner, Stu Rothman, who's actually the developer of 1 South Main Street where the fire was. He is open to that, so if a nonprofit were to come in and help with the improvements and run it, he's open to ideas, so he's on a short list of folks I'm trying to get together with in like interim capacity to kind of, with no pun intended, light a fire to get things done.
Yeah, please don't light a fire. Yeah.
But this sense of urgency, the problem we've got a macroeconomic problem in the sense that it costs too much money to borrow right now. Resources are still kind of, they're mostly available, but not quite the same pre-pandemic. Labor is more expensive. So for a developer to come in and make the changes they need to, if he does structural changes to the Clark building, that's going to trigger a lot of things that had been grandfathered in terms of code compliance. So it's going to trigger fire suppression changes. It's going to trigger potentially the elevator. There's going to be large scale costs associated with making small changes if it's not done in a certain way. And those are the things I feel like as a community, whether it's through the cultural district 501c3 or through the town or through some partnership of both. I did have breakfast with a gentleman who works at the state level, and apparently there's federal money available. I'm just learning about this, so I'm speaking a little bit over my skis, but if as a town, we've got a AAA bond rating, we've got a very high bond rating. We can actually pledge that rating on behalf of a developer that wants to essentially borrow against it. And so that gives a developer access to, I think I heard 4%.
Wow.
Loan, which is a third of what the commercial rates are right now. So if we can make the economics work for a developer, I think we can do a lot more. So I see a lot of that is our role with the cultural district status and the partnership. We can do some things the town can't do as a 501c3.
What time does this end?
It's kind of a soft end. If you need to go, Deb, it's fine. We often wrap up around 10:30 or so, but yeah.
No, I can talk.
Yeah, somewhere between 10 and 10:30, depending on the.
No, that's fine. I didn't know what the parameters were.
Yeah.
Can you explain more about the sandwich board regulations and other things that prevent like?
Briefly, I will tell you. 15 years ago, Ginger and I, and Ben sat down to review the signage bylaws.
This is town bylaws.
Town bylaws, so what you could and couldn't do, and
Okay.
where you could or couldn't do it. We
Sure.
reviewed, made suggestions, made changes. And then the Metropolitan.
Area Planning Council.
Yes, there was a woman there who said, oh, I know all about this. I'll take it over, and it disappeared into the void. And then somehow I was talking to Terry Evans, again, this was several years ago, and said, does anybody know what happened to our review of the bylaws?
Terry being on the.
I know,
Terry,
yep, yep, yep.
And she said, oh, we're gonna deal with that. The issue is before I die or after I'm gone. It has not been addressed.
We're stringing you along so you live to 100 next month.
We should have kept a copy, is what.
Oh, goodness.
But I think in terms of what the town has to address right now, that's
It's
not
a
at the top of the
priority.
list.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that a small subcommittee of the cultural district of Natick Center Associates, 2 or 3 people could look at, again, to make some recommendations in terms of what works for safety,
Mhm.
for lack of
Yeah.
clutter, but for good marketing.
Yeah,
Kind
And
of
go
thing.
wayfinding. Just
And
being
go
able to
way-
see. There
We've
used
been
to be-
talking wayfinding for
And
years too.
safety, right? So one of the things coming out of this is the width of the sidewalks, which would allow for safer passage. I think part of the problem is selective enforcement. Sometimes people were allowed to put things out temporarily when they'd open, but technically they couldn't.
Mhm.
Some saw that as an affront, we should be able to do it all the time, but then you get into access and maintenance and things like that. So-
And you also get into, well, they're doing
Right.
Right.
So,
That's why we need a Jewish mother.
Steve, I see Stephen Evers is on the call. I want to put you on the spot. Are you active with the folks working on the ballroom? I couldn't remember if you were part of that group.
Yeah, I mean, in spirit, the Natick Historical Commission is behind this move, and apparently, I've been a bridge with the landlord that just bought Clark's block, and we spent some time talking about it. Aside, what does the Historical Commission control? What funds might be available out there? So I'm sort of part of the subgroup, and as an architect, I think I would like to contribute to code conformity, as you mentioned it. How do you access the building? How does that work in the rear alleyway, probably in terms of access? How do we support if the concert hall ever opened up? How do we support the nighttime activities in it? Where's the parking going to prevail? There's tons of issues with it, but a very open mind to this whole thing, which is a wonderful opportunity for the town. I don't think we'll ever have an opportunity like this again. He evaluated it to put 2-story condos in the space, and structurally that just plain does not work. So this has become the best choice for that space to be rejuvenated.
I'll reach out to you offline. I'd love to hear more and we should get together with Stu. I'd love to have the conversation in my interim capacity.
Cool.
I want to ask Steve a very naive question, because it always bothered me that the hallway to Pegasus was smack dab in the middle. Is it possible to move that to the back so that the ballroom is more intact instead of being?
Probably not. I think it's going to call for a new, there's only one elevator on one side of the building. There needs to be an elevator on the other side of the building. So direct access from the street can be obtained.
Okay.
But there's going to be some good minds on this moving forward. So I have a feeling we'll find ways to solve that problem. Like Paul said, it's about money. But I want to remind people, if a non-for-profit is involved in this, we have CPAP money coming along. Not CPAP, what did I say?
CPC, yes.
CPA.
That CPA funds will be available probably starting next spring.
We've got a couple of members of the CPC committee here.
Three
Three.
here.
Yeah, Rick, I see you've been patient with your hand up. Did you want to comment, ask?
Yeah, just a thought. In terms of how to make fresh produce in the farmer's market more affordable for lower income residents and so forth. Something caught my eye in the paper that I don't really understand. Just I think last week, and it was there are some towns around and including in Western Mass that have created their own currency. And what that's designed to do, I believe, is to allow people who want to shop locally, but are basically priced out of these little towns because there's a lot of summer vending and a lot of wealthy visitors and people who are coming into town who can afford much higher prices than the year-round residents can. And, I think there's, Natick is a town that definitely has a mix of lower income and middle income people. And I don't frequent the farmers market enough to know whether those people are shopping there. And I don't know if there's any data on who the shoppers, who the buyers are of produce there. But one of the reasons that I don't go there all that much for produce is that I can get it elsewhere that's good and that's less expensive. And so, I think it's incredibly important, obviously nutritionally, to be eating fresh, locally grown produce. But there are a lot of other places in Natick and beyond where you can shop, stores that keep pretty good, fresh, local stuff. You have the outlet down on just having a senior moment, the farm that sells its produce down at the yellow blinking light on South Main, which is near to me, that I stop in at on my way here. Yeah. The orchard people have been there a long time.
Yes.
So I don't know if Paul, if you've heard of this idea of local currency.
Just to the viability, yeah. I don't know if we talked about this. One of the first things I did when I joined, when we created the Economic Development Committee, I met with the founders of Ithaca Hours, and I did some research into Berkshire's, both of which I think, it's basically local currency supported, it's a nonprofit and all that. And I was actually at the time as on a select board thinking that we could use it as an essentially effective way to help seniors by giving a coupon rate, if you will, for paying water bills and things like that. So I was looking at it as an affordability mechanism for town municipal things. So I was asking these places if they're using it in municipal government. Ithaca was just starting to. I don't think it took off from there. I think they've had issues with it, but I'm open to that. I love the idea. When I joined the Chamber of Commerce, I wanted to either create Metro money or, Natick notes, or I was floating a bunch of ideas around. But
Right, that's a little bigger.
yeah, no, that's.
I'm thinking, but what I will tell you is the Service Council has already signed up 400 families for SNAP benefits, which are food stamps. They are going to be signing up several hundred more families. Our produce vendors all take SNAP. We just got a grant from the Metro West Healthcare Foundation for $15,000, which we will be making $5 coupons that the Service Council will give out to their SNAP families each month. Now, $5 isn't a lot, but it's more. And they will monitor, because I'm gonna be in charge of when is it given out? When is it redeemed? So we have some data. They'll control who it goes to. And the foundation's interested in what languages, because they want to reach a broader. So we're working together to create about $1,250 a month in $5 coupons that will be given to these SNAP families. Now, it is not a lot, but it is more for these families.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. I didn't know that about the SNAP, and I think it's an ante. It gets you in the game. You may not do your major shopping there, but it gets you downtown, and it certainly improves the the economic diversity.
I tell you that it took us a long time to train some of the Russian families that used to be bussed over. They were there at 8 o'clock when we were setting up the winter market, and I would have to keep throwing them out of the building because they were afraid there wouldn't be enough for them if they were there at 9 o'clock. And
they're always there before 9.
They're always there before 9, and they're always angling around, just start filling their bags before 9 if you don't pay attention. So we do get SNAP and HIP at the market, and I had actually asked some of the farms you know, how do you do? And a good chunk of their business is SNAP and HIP, and then this will be the additional, technically additional $1,200 a month that helps the farmers and helps the families.
And can you remind me what HIP is?
It's a health initiative program, or it's additional food stamps.
Okay,
And
2 SNAP families?
yes, so
Okay.
SNAP is the basic food stamps and HIP is an additional that not everybody gets.
Okay, okay, okay.
I'm not as versed as I should be.
You know, hip on hip.
I'm not hip on HIP. No.
Someone had to say it. Thanks, Paul.
Pick up the visualization of snapping hips. I mean,
Yeah, that's even worse. Wow.
Natick residents that are gonna be. that are-
Service Council, yes,
Yeah.
only deals with it.
Okay, because I know a lot of people come
Yeah.
from Framingham with their own.
A place to
SNAP.
turn
Yeah.
helps with that
Yeah,
population
yeah,
too.
yeah.
They have a
Yeah.
blended Framingham native.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. As usual, you know, invite people like you to come and talk to us, Deb and Paul as well. And for people like me, at least, I go down and I see the vibrancy on the common, and it doesn't really occur to me all the things that are happening beneath the surface to drive that. And it's just so refreshing to hear about all the things that your groups are involved in, to be thinking not just about the issues of the day, but the issues of the month, the year. How are we going to, continue to drive this downtown?
Yeah, 2 things I want to comment on. I had to set up my winter schedule for the market, which starts in November, because I'm getting requests and I have to schedule space and who's coming and who isn't. So my mind is always in,
6 months ahead.
yeah, and the older you get, juggling different time frames is challenging. But I want to get back to kids at the market. I love it. Okay. One of the reasons that I sell coffee and juice at the market is if I'm gonna be there, I might as well raise money in support for Kids Connect. For me, there aren't a lot of clear lines. All right, if I can do something that benefits 2 or 3 at the same time, that's what I'll do. And my dream at the time was that some of the kids who come to Kids Connect will work it and learn that math is functional.
Wow.
That worked off and on over the years. So all my volunteers are now not kids, and I'm exceedingly grateful to them. But when I get a phone call sometimes directly from the kid themselves, it says, I make cards, can I come to the meeting? I'm thrilled because it's an opportunity for them to use their math, to practice marketing, to get comfortable talking to people, to develop confidence in themselves. So I never, actually, Charlie will say, as he goes around to collect for me, are we charging that one? And I'd have to stop and think, are they old enough to be charged? So having kids come to the market and be small entrepreneurs, I think is an integral part. Let me just.
It's like your documentary music.
Yes.
Sort of walk off song.
Yeah, could be. So, I encourage kids because it's a learning experience.
Well, and if I may glom onto that and sharing experience, Bill, you had mentioned with your grandchildren, my daughter and her friend sold bracelets after one of their friends was lost to suicide, and Deb couldn't have been more gracious, and just, that still sticks with Allie. She's gonna be a senior in college this year, and just the ability to do that, and it's not just about the money, but there's the community.
It isn't
aspect of it
about the
was
money.
tremendous, yeah.
It's, I think sometimes we don't give kids enough opportunity to be their best selves. And if the market can do that, I'm thrilled.
And if I may.
How
just
do the kids know that this is an avenue for them? Do you work with the schools at all to get that message?
I listen during the school year, couple days a week. So the teachers get to know me, but for the most part, a mother walks by and says, oh, my daughter makes, or somebody talks to somebody, or they have seen. I trust the universe to do what has to be done.
I like that phrase. I trust the universe to do what has to be done. I think I'm gonna put that one on a t-shirt.
Remember that in November.
Oh, yeah.
Go down that path, but no, on a very serious, in talking about the structure of the cultural district, you know, it became obvious to me that even members of the Natick Center Associates Board itself did not know they were members of the Natick Center Associates Board. They thought they were part of the Cultural District Board. I think just this notion of clarity, expectation. We're living in a time too, we need volunteers. We need actually word of mouth for people. Like we've got Natick Nights coming up this Thursday, July 4th. You know, we're trying to get the full word out for people. We're gonna do a consolidated version of it. It won't be on the common. But just reaching people nowadays is so hard because our information is so decentralized. So the more you see something going on or hear something about it, if you can share it on your personal Facebook and Instagram, if you're sharing that way, word of mouth, obviously, how we connect with people, because everyone in this group is connected with at least 500 people. You know, it feels like, so it's, to me, that's a big part of our success is the community itself owning these things. And that means jumping in to volunteer when you can, jumping in to promote.
And if anybody knows any middle school math tutors, have them call me. Kids Connected always needs middle school math tutors. Just, I'm putting it out there because you never know who in the
Just
next.
out of curiosity, Deb, I actually do know middle school math tutors. Are the hourly wages that you pay competitive?
Not with private practice. We pay 34 an hour, and you might only work 1 hour a week because somebody called and your time and their time coordinates. So it is not like you are being hired to work X number. You're being hired to work per person that coordinates with you. So I have some, you know, in our heyday, I had math tutors who were there from 2:30 to 6:30. And sometimes I may have a math tutor who only works Tuesday for 2 hours. So it's very flexible.
Would you be willing to work with college freshmen and people who don't have a teaching license yet? I do know kids who are studying that in school, or high school kids who are really good at it. Would you be interested in those people?
No, I have not involved volunteers because then you get into supervising and training. All of my teachers have taught either in the school or somewhere, whether they're certified or not, there's been a body of experience.
Right.
I've had people.
The reason I ask that is because I know there are a lot of high school kids who and college freshmen and sophomores and who would love to do that for that type of money. Most of the teachers that I know that tutor over the summer make $100 an hour. Because that seems to be the going rate these days. And I will certainly pass the information on, but I don't know how many of them I could convince to.
And your college kids are away all of the school year for the most part. If they're not, we can certainly have a conversation. I am not going to hire high school kids just as a precedent.
Gotcha.
And I don't do volunteers. I mean, I have to set some boundaries. Most of my tutors are either active tutors, retired tutors, or have some experience. Well, in language arts, you don't have to have been a teacher to teach someone to spell, but
I don't think about it. I started tutoring in math when I was in high school, and then I became a teacher and I majored in math. So I call me. I will do.
Well, yes,
you need people in the summer and
the Natick math program. I'm trying to be polite about this. Needs some help. They have changed
the school department.
Yeah, when I came in, it was horrendous, and they changed it to something else that was horrendous. These kids come in high school and they're using their fingers because they never learned the basics. And then they recently added back classic math, which means learning the basics. So it is less horrendous than it was, but the kids come in and for some reason hormonally they hit middle school and they think they're dumb. So they think they can't do math. And many of them are brilliant at it. So half of what we do is the confidence. As well as the skill, and sometimes we have to go back and sort of fill in the basic holes because they're working on something more advanced.
Well, this might be a good time to wrap up. Cindy and Brinley and Deb, if you want to have some offline conversations about math
I want
tutoring.
to say that as a person who moved here in 2019, and who lives right across the from the fire station on Lincoln Street, I have fallen in love with Natick, particularly because of everything that happens right there and in the spiritual center. And I do all my shopping there. I don't have to drive. So, you know, once a month I ride my bicycle to Roche Brothers to get oil. And I go to Whole Foods another once a month to get dried beans and rice. So it's been pretty cool. What, you know, it would be nice to be able to get, you know, so I have to go to the drugstore, I have to get on my bicycle. And I have a car, but I try to limit that. But so thinking I might be unusual, but there are gonna be all these apartments on second floor and third floor here, and then just past Lincoln Street where the school was, of people that would shop right at the market.
So go talk to George and tell him to get his act together.
And I will talk to George. I didn't know he made it so his sister couldn't be there anymore.
Well,
I met her first. I got that. But I do go there because he has some things that I can buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Dates in the winter.
Yep.
Well, again, Deb, thanks so much for joining us. It's we've learned a lot. As usual, I think it's a great start to the week. Next week, we're going to have Miriam Jennings with us to give us updates on Natick is United, which is a fantastic group in town. And with that, I guess we can
Have you
sign
filled
off
all
for
the
today.
slots for
I'm
July?
sorry, what's Cindy?
Have you filled all the slots for the rest of July?
Yes, July is booked. The let's see, just real quickly, we have got we've got Miriam, and then on the 15th, Danielle Conte is going to give us an update on Family Promise. The 22nd, the new pastor at First Congregational, Reverend Cindy Worthington Berry, will talk. She's hinting at me that she's going to have some work for the group to do during the session. It sounds fascinating, but I don't want to, you know, spill her secret. And then on the 29th, Christine Guthrie and Lynn Canty will come from Spark Kindness. And then we're going to take an August break, and we'll pick up again after Labor Day. So it's in September and beyond that we're looking for speakers. So
Contacted Rebecca Gallo, the new head of Place Return.
that would be terrific. Yeah. If you have contact information for her, if you could just email that to me, Ted. Cool. Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a great week. Have a great 4th of July holiday. And we'll
Thank you, everybody.
see you next
Thank you,
week.
Deb,
everyone.
Paul.
Yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
great.